Welcome to this episode of Down the Fairway. Of course, I'm in Florida, and I cannot leave without getting you on this series. This series started my whole program with the Power Disc Golf Academy. I've been helping a lot of people. In this episode of Down the Fairway, we're going to be asking the greatest player of all time 3 questions. The first one is, when you first started, how did you get good that fast? Then the next sequence of the question is going to be, from when you got a little bit better, let's say advanced, and you were competing in advance, how did you move up to pro? And I think I want to dive more into the mental strategy behind that, because physically a lot of people can throw the shots, but it's that winning mentality.
In the early going, I had thrown a bunch of beach frisbee already. I had played catch with my buddies, thrown, MTAs out into the wind on the beach, and thrown a ton of whammos, stuff like that. I used to actually come down to this park. I have buddies that lived up in the neighborhood. We used to come down to the parking lot here at night. There was a light in the parking lot. We used to play till 2 in the morning, just catch, before there was ever a disc golf course here. And I'd say I had a pretty good idea of how to, generate power on a disc, a frisbee, because I'd thrown tons of beach frisbee, and it was all beach frisbee. I had never seen any kind of golf disc or anything up until the point where I had heard about disc golf. And I batted baseball left-handed, which is another key for picking up the sport quickly, being a right-handed backhand player. So batting lefty, look at this move. What is that? That's almost exactly a right-handed backhanded disc throw. So I had that ingrained in me since I was this tall. I played t-ball all the way up till I was 15 years old. I played baseball, so I had my left-handed swing ingrained in me. That's where I got my power. That's where I had my accuracy. I was much better on this side of the plate. I could switch it. I can hit right-handed, but I wasn't as powerful and I wasn't as accurate. So being a left-handed batter was, I think, one of the biggest reasons I picked up the sport super fast, because I already had that motion ingrained where most right-handed players bat this way, and this is foreign to them. That's why a lot of right-handed players pick up sidearm quicker, in their early days of playing. They can throw a sidearm a little better because the left foot forward, right foot behind is more of the power motion for most right-handed players and that type of move. So that was, kind of, I think, how I got past square one early in my playing days. And then between moving from a newbie to playing my first pro tournament, it took me a little less than a year to do that. And because there wasn't a whole lot of AM stuff back then, it was no amateur at all, really no novice, nothing. There was only an advanced division and a pro division. You were either advanced or you were pro. There wasn't much else. And I had a lot of people in this area who, were willing to help. C.R. Willie being one of them. Bob Blair, a guy probably most people haven't heard of. This guy could throw a rock back in the day, a mid-range. I mean, he was throwing this thing damn near 400 feet. Oh, wow. And it had an audible snap when he released the disc. So those were the 2 guys I learned, the basic good power moves from and all that. And the finer points, came from CR, because he was a little more well-versed in, the sidearms and the touch shots and the trouble shots, the scrambles and stuff like that, and putting. And I don't putt like CR at all, but he kind of, gave me the idea of the speed issues of the putt. Like I putt fairly slow. I'm not a very fast putter. And back in the day, the baskets were a little smaller. The trays were skinnier. There wasn't as many chains, so you kind of had to have just a hair more touch. That's where I developed my putt, being a little slower than today's putt. I think today's putt has a few more miles an hour on it than mine. But I counteract with just a little bit of loft. With the longer putt, I loft it a little bit more, and it gets there. Plus, I don't 3-putt very often because I have a slower putt. So I think being a ball golfer, I was a ball golfer before I was a disc golfer. I played for my high school team. Just getting close, if you've missed, it was always ingrained in me as a golfer. If you're going to miss the shot, be close so your next one is easy. So I think I had that going for me, being a golfer and just scoring. Being a golfer, it's easier to mentally take on, make your best score. Even if you don't make that shot, make your best score. And the next one, you got to make the next one and things like that. I think that was one of the reasons I probably picked up the game a little quicker than most people that haven't played golf, because they don't know the ins and outs of wasting strokes near the basket. On a golf course, you can be right greenside, you can take 4 strokes and get up, and that's in disc golf. You shouldn't let that happen ever. Anytime you're within 50, 60, 70 feet, it should be 2 strokes at the most. So, and as far as competing and getting from an advanced player shooting, even a couple under, to a player that's going to contend in tournaments shooting 7, 8, 9, 10 under and things like that. that comes down to the mental side. You know, I think that's where you touched on earlier, is just having that belief and that knowledge within yourself, the confidence, knowing you can do it, having done it many times before, not trying to play outside yourself, play within your abilities and things like that. Reading the wind is a huge thing. You know, you got to know what the wind's doing, how it's going to affect the flight of the disc. Those are all very big factors. Balance. I think balance is something a lot of people don't talk about. Being very balanced throughout your whole run-up, swing, delivery, follow through, all that. If you're balanced, your shot's going to be more balanced. It's going to be more accurate. If you're all off balance, flailing all over the place, your disc is probably going to do something similar to that as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot of little tiny things throughout my upbringing that made me a better player quickly. And I think more so than anything I've mentioned so far was repetition. I played a ton. I got in, I mean, it used to be just 9 holes back here in the day. I probably played 10 rounds of 9 holes in a day sometimes, which is like 5 rounds of 18 holes. So I think repetition is more where you're going to get the biggest benefit, is just doing it. And during those repetition rounds, I might have been throwing 2 or 3 discs on each hole as well sometimes, just straight up practicing, not really playing for score, just practicing, repetitions. And I think if you want to get good quickly, that's what you're going to have to do. You're not going to get good quickly if you don't put in the reps. And going on to being the world beater, from, you know, challenging in pro tournaments, cashing in pro tournaments and things like that, you know, that was one step. But then getting up there and, you know, contending for the win more often than not throughout my career. I think I won 49-point-something% of my tournaments that I played in, and I think that was more what I wanted to be. I wanted to be in the hunt, final 9 Sunday. You know, I just wanted to be somewhere near the lead. If I was in the lead, great. If I wasn't in the lead, I wanted to be near the lead. That way I'd have a chance. And that all comes down to right here. That's that 6-inch course between your ears. You've got to be mentally strong. You have confidence. You got to, you know, just know what you're doing. Play within yourself. And believe in yourself. I think more so than anything, believe in what you're doing. Believe in what the shot you're gonna throw is the correct shot, and then executing that shot. You know, giving it your all without becoming unbalanced. You know, giving it all the energy, putting that energy into the finest points. You know, giving it the right height, giving it the right angle, following through correctly. All those little points, you know, are gonna lead you to make better shots and score better holes. As far as winning, more often than not, you know, in my career, I think the big guy upstairs had a little bit to do with that, because golf is a game of, you know, ground play, luck, kicks, trees, stuff like that. There's going to be some spots where you throw great shots and you don't end up in great results, and you've got to use your brain to get past those. You know, shake it off, water in the duck's back, like let it roll off. Don't hang on to it for 10 holes afterwards. Just, you know, maybe at that moment give it to, but then, you know, let it roll off and come back. And you can always throw your best shot after the worst shot. You have the worst shot of your life, and you can follow it up with the best shot of your life. So I think that's where, you know, tournament play and scoring and contending for wins is just shaking off the bad stuff and letting it roll off, and then, you know, knowing you're gonna throw a good shot on your next one, and being confident to do that. You know, having that self-belief, that will, that want, that focus, that drive. Those are things that, you know, either you have or you don't, or you got to build within yourself. Is that want? I think that's more where it was at with me. It says I wanted it. You know, I bled disc golf. I had a passion for it, and I think to me that's where it's at. Is you got to have that passion. You got to have that drive. You got to have that will, and you know, if you want to get good at the sport, give it the reps and have that passion, and you'll get there.
Love it. Thank you, Kenny. Perfect. Well said, buddy. All those points that Kenny just brought up are absolutely perfect. I mean, just from the start, I think one of the things that I even took from it is go play catch with your buddies. Learn the Frisbee nuances of the drops and the lifts, and to have touch going into the greens when you're first starting off as like a recreational player. I see a lot of people go out there and they're throwing fast drivers or fairway drivers and they want the big distance, but it all starts with the fundamentals. And he had that early on because of his playing catch with his buddies. And I think that's something that's very overlooked. I mean, we just had a tournament in Austin where people had a 200-foot shot, kind of a lost shot in our game. People were taking 12s, 18s, 20s because it's kind of that lost art. And if you have that, it's a great foundation for building to the next stage, which he also said, you know what, how that's going to happen is you got to go out there and you got to practice. Get to the field, throw as many shots as you possibly can work on the technique, stay balanced, like he said, and all those things. You can't just think you're going to do it. You got to go learn and do it. The one thing that we have these days is video. Video yourself, see your balance, see your techniques, shoot, watch videos of Ken Climo, and watch how balanced he is through every shot and how technical he is with his starting points and his ending points, because that's where you're going to make it to that next level. And then the confidence thing, the belief in yourself, I think that's one of the hardest things that people deal with, because there's great athletes everywhere. That's where you get the edge, is between the ears, like you said. And the way you do that is, I think, being kind to yourself. Like he said, you throw a bad shot, next one, throw your best shot. And that's about having that dog in you, I think. And the only way you get that way is you got to tell yourself over and over and over that you're the best, that you're going to be the best, and your brain listens to you. So in conclusion, I want to thank Kenny for coming on here. He's obviously the GOAT. So if you're listening to this, take heed of what he says, write it down on paper, and then go practice. Thanks for coming. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you down the fairway.